Hey, what's going on, everybody? It's Chris with InsideTheU. Just wrapped up the press conferences with Mario Cristobal, as well as coordinator Shannon Dawson and Lance Guidry. To me, there were 5 takeaways that I had from watching the press conference, but certainly if you want to watch the entirety of their press conferences, it will be posted on the channel, so definitely stay tuned for that. First off, just with the notes that stood out to me, and number 1 is head coach Mario Cristobal saying it'll be a couple weeks for Ruben Bain, the star defensive end who missed pretty much the entirety of the Florida game, goes out after only 3 plays there in the first quarter. And coach said it then after the game and said it again today that it's what he is calling a soft tissue issue, and that'll be a couple weeks. He did rule him out against Florida A&M in this upcoming game. The game after that is Ball State, so maybe look for him to return at South Florida September 21st. Disappointing, obviously. He's a huge part of this team, but as Lance Guidry mentioned, that he feels like the defensive line is a strength of this defense, and they do have a lot of depth, which we did see against Florida, that they were able to roll in a bunch of different guys at defensive end and defensive tackle, and notably Akeem Mesidor, who he said he does think he'll be better as the season goes on, coming off the rust of not playing a lot last year. But he's a guy that can play tackle or end, but he said that they'd like to get some other guys involved too, so definitely pay attention to that. But again, if he's going to be out just for those 2 games, I don't think it's a huge issue. I do worry about him and the team, if he's going to miss some games in the ACC. But certainly, hopefully, he gets back with a healthy recovery, because certainly he could have a huge year for the Hurricanes defense. Sticking with the Hurricanes defense, my second takeaway from the press conference was that Coach Guidry mentioned that in terms of preparing for Florida, that what they did was, instead of just looking and really identifying all of the plays that Florida ran in previous seasons as they kind of were scouting them, that what he did was they took a look and really identified and really worked on the top 5 to 7 plays that stood out almost every game. And he said, sure enough, those 5 to 7 plays that they really spent a lot of time repping showed up early in the game. He said between the first 10 to 15 plays of the game, a lot of those plays came up. So good scouting by Miami in this one. They knew what to expect. And he also thought that overall across the board that they did do a good job, especially in the secondary, graded out well in terms of what he thought, which was a little bit different than what the PFF grades were. And one noticeable thing that he wanted to make sure he made clear in terms of the grading was Jaden Harris, the safety, and I mentioned after the game, because it did look like he was the one that missed on that big long touchdown run that they gave up, the 71-yarder. But he said actually, it was actually a linebacker that made an incorrect blitz there, and that Jaden actually wasn't the one, even though maybe it looked like that. So he did make that note, and so I want to pass that along. So switching gears to the offense to start out my third takeaway here. And there's a lot to talk about with the offense, certainly. But let's start with the tight end production. I've mentioned it quite a bit. Last year, Miami ranked last in the ACC with only 154 receiving yards by tight ends. In the game against the Gators, they go for 136. Certainly huge production from the tight end group. Mario Cristobal talked about it, as well as Coach Dawson. But I thought it was great. 7 catches from the tight ends, only 18 from a year ago. They equaled their touchdown total. Only 1 last year. They had 1 in this one. So great to see Cam McCormick with the touchdown. Elijah Lofton got a couple catches later. But it's all about Elijah Arroyo. Had the huge day there with the 4 catches, the 79 yards, the big one over the middle. And they feel comfortable and confident with the tight end group that they can be a productive group. So we saw it there in this game. I think we've all been high on Elijah Arroyo since before he arrived at Miami. The production just haven't been there for different reasons, either because he was behind a guy or because he was injured, not quite fully himself. But certainly a great start there. It's something that they definitely want to pick up on, and pick up on their production from a year ago, and it showed. And I think it only really helps the offense with its dynamic ability to be able to, add in another group that you definitely have to be prepared for as an opponent. So tight end production, definitely a huge day by them, and they want to look to continue that. But it's definitely a great start. And again, it all starts with Elijah Arroyo. And just adding with the tight end group, with what Coach Dawson had to say, and he said this in preseason kind of leading up to the game, but one of the reasons why he's really confident in the tight end group is because they can go with a lot of different personnel groupings, and he said the tight ends just don't care where they're lined up. And he said, the personnel groupings, as he mentioned, as kind of examples, they can line up in 12, they can go 13, 14 personnel groups, they go by 4 by 1 or whatever it might be with how many receivers compared to tight ends that they want to go with or backs. But he feels very comfortable and confident with whatever personnel groupings, wherever he wants to line up the tight ends, that they can still be effective and productive. And to me, I thought that was noteworthy, that's kind of leading to why they're able to be productive, is because they don't really care where they're lined up, which really helps the offensive play caller. And just a couple notes on Cam Ward. Coach Dawson mentioned that he was very comfortable. That was one of the things that really stood out to him, was he was very comfortable. And it was something I talked about after the game. It was something I noticed. It's something that you guys noticed, obviously, too. Really comfortable in the pocket, comfortable with the offense. It led to the production. He was able to bounce back after the interception. But one of the things that stood out to me was Coach Dawson mentioned that, in terms of extending the plays, they don't do that in practice. Quarterbacks don't have live hitting. Typically the plays are blown dead a little earlier. So even though they saw it on film, and it's kind of Cam's makeup and it's what he wants to do, actually seeing it in game was certainly great to see, because again, they don't practice that in practice oftentimes because it is blown dead. So I thought that was something interesting, and certainly I think it's going to be something we see all season long with Cam at quarterback there. It'll just be how he continues to have the good feel in the pocket, and I'm very curious to see, we're not going to see it this week probably, but how teams kind of look to defend him or get him off track. I keep thinking back on the game I watched him play last year while at Washington State against UCLA. I assume we're going to see some teams try to do that if they can, try to get him off track. Last takeaway from the press conferences goes with Xavier Restrepo. Coach Dawson said, ever since he's been here, since getting here last year, he's a guy that shows up every day and just makes plays. And he's just a very reliable guy, and we've seen that. Anybody that's been kind of watching this team, we saw it in a big-time fashion against the Gators. I keep thinking about that catch that he made where he turned and got upfield, because I said that in the spring, and just kind of watching the times I've gotten to see him in fall practice, to me that's been something different that he's added, that knack to being able to get upfield and make plays. And as far as getting upfield and making plays, that is something Coach Dawson and the offensive staff has really made a point of priority for this team, that they really want to do that. They use the mantra, the motto there, that be hard to tackle. Don't go down easy. This goes with everybody on offense, not just the running backs, because I think certainly they're going to be able to do that with their power builds that they have there with Fletcher and Martinez, but everybody involved with the offense. So look for that. Look for them to fight for yards and try to get as many as possible. I think Restrepo is going to be good at that. So those are my 5 takeaways. Definitely, once again, watch the full press conferences. And if you have some takeaways, maybe you watch the press conferences that stood out to you, that I didn't hit on, or maybe these 5 comments that I had here, these 5 topics, definitely drop below. Let me know what you think, and maybe your thoughts too on watching the game back. Maybe there are some things that you noticed from the game that stood out to you. So once again, great start for Miami. Obviously, 1-0. We'll see how things go moving forward. Coach Dawson mentioned, and I'll kind of leave you with this, that it's seven days. It's 7 days to get ready for a game, or 7 days, where you're evaluated, and they've got to kind of take that mentality, not just the 1-0, but how do you do in these 7 days? Each 7-day package kind of for the next game. So we'll see how they do. They'll get back at practice on Tuesday as they get ready for this game, their home opener against Florida A&M. Thanks for watching. Hopefully you have a good rest of the day, and take care.